Hey, 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 all of our entrepreneur friends. Sorry we're a little bit late. We had some technical difficulties, but we are here now. So
Isn't that
don't you fret.
appropriate on our tech day?
I know. Yep. You want to talk about some tech? Well, now you're going to see a little bit of the downfalls of some of the tech. But yeah, so we are going to talk about some technology tonight and how that can help you in your business. So let's introduce ourselves. And if you have any questions at all today, feel free to drop those into the comments. We would love to hear your questions. So, Juliet, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 2. My name is Jewett Payne, founder of Starving Artist Courses. It's your all-in-one online music education resource. So we teach music virtually, and it's amazing, so much fun. And yeah, just super excited to be here with you guys. Dr. Dave, what about you?
Yeah, so Dr. Dave Harvitz with Renew Concierge Physical Therapy. We focus on orthopedic physical therapy care. We have a separate model than a traditional model, but that model actually serves our clients better, which is kind of our heart. And so that's what we do in Pensacola. And so, Niagara Nick, you kind of give it away where you're from.
I know. Yeah. So I am Niagara Nick from Niagara Falls, specifically on the US side. So that's what our business does is we do tours at Niagara Falls. And then what I went on the blocks with, which is how we all know each other, is from a show that we were on about entrepreneurs. Um, I talked more about our new project called Explore Niagara, which is a one-stop shop for all the fun things to do in Niagara Falls, specifically on the US side. But yeah, so tonight we are going to be talking about, like I said, technology and how it can impact your business. So we are going to cover what is a tech stack. I know we all have a tech stack for our businesses,
Mhm.
but we didn't know it. So we're going to teach you what a tech stack is and give you some examples of how that can help you. What kind of options are there out there to help make my business more efficient? You're either working on your business or in your business. So let's work on our business and let the technology work in it. And what is the first step of systemizing my business? And then our last topic we're going to talk about is how do I partner with God in my use of technology to run my business? So we are the Cornerstone Spirit-Led Entrepreneurship podcast, and we are going to talk about the cornerstone, Jesus, and how God can help us with our businesses. So take it away, Dr. Dave.
Yeah, so let's define what a tech stack is for us first, right? So a tech stack is truly just the technology that we use to run our business, and it could be anything from Google, StreamYard is what we're using, or YouTube if you want to do videos online. But you can also have a tech stack that involves stuff for a CRM or things that capture client information. And so there's lots of different technology that we can use, and we're going to get into some more specifics in a little bit. But really what's important is why we have a tech stack and what it's used for. And so the reason why a tech stack is so important is it really truly automates a lot of your business, and it makes your business more effective. And also, really what we want to be able to do is outsource, right? And so if we're outsourcing certain parts of our business, we're going to be able to become more free to work on the business instead of inside it. And it's really important to understand that. And I know a little while ago when I first started my business, I was doing everything. I was budgeting, I was using spreadsheets, and I was doing the phone calls, and I was doing all of everything that you could possibly do inside of a business, which is a lot of what young entrepreneurs do. And a good friend of mine once said to me, "Hey, Dave, do what you love and outsource the rest." And one of the most effective ways to outsource the rest is actually using technology. And so why don't we get a little bit more into what kind of technologies we have? And so, Duet, go ahead and give us the first maybe 2 or 3 that we really like to use that are absolutely imperative for any business.
Oh yeah, for sure. So
Here, I'm
definitely,
actually going to pause you really quick. And
yeah.
here, the reason I want to pause you real quick is
Mhm.
because we have a really good question. And this question I feel is for you, Juliet, because you know this specific question. So
Okay.
this is from Amber, and she says, I have a tech question. what platform should I use to record webinars and charge
Mm.
people to be able to download different workshops? And I feel like this is right up your alley. So
Oh yeah,
why don't you
I think
cover
so too.
that and explain what tech you use for that?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, what's going on, Amber? Amber is
Talk about a
also
powerhouse joining us.
no,
I
for
know,
real, right?
seriously.
So Amber is
Amber's
She
the
should be on this
champ.
podcast teaching us.
for real. Amber is a phenomenal entrepreneur, and she is one of our co-stars as well. She is amazing. So welcome, Amber, to the podcast. But Amber, oh my goodness, what I use is called Kajabi, and Kajabi is amazing. Kajabi, Kajabi. You understand Kajabi.com. They have everything you need. So, like for my business, Starving Artist Courses, I record video lessons, upload it on the website for passive income, being able to just have these module-based courses already on the website for students to just purchase right there. And it's fully integrated. So we're going to get into this, but it being a tech stack, this one's perfect as it builds your website, SEO, email marketing, building courses like we just talked about, and webinars, all of that. Everything is in there. So the features are endless.
So it has funnels for you as well, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Got it. Yes, it really does. It's actually a very similar
Mhm.
technology is high level.
Yes. Yep.
And so I'm sure there's different nuances to difference between Kajabi and high level, but it sounds like they're on the same playing field with one another.
Yeah.
And that's actually what I use in my business. I don't actually have paid courses, but what I do have is a video library for my clients.
Yeah.
So I can sit there and spend half the session working with them and teaching them exercises, or I can work on their bodies, make their bodies optimized, and then say, go home, watch my videos for free. It's part of our plan.
Mhm.
And then we actually make ourselves more efficient, right? Which is good for our customers because it really does reduce the amount of time necessary. And so that's a really great way of that I use my system to actually improve the effectiveness of my treatment and really reduce the cost for my clients because they need less sessions because I'm not spending all my time teaching them the same exercises over and over again.
Yeah, there you go.
So good. Well, then why don't you just continue, Duet? Because I know it sounds like Kajabi is sort of like some of our tech stack wrapped up into one.
Yeah.
So why don't you spend some more time talking about it?
Yeah, for sure. Now, what was interesting was when I first started my business back in 2020, I was using a different website. And it's for anyone it depends on what you want. So I used to use Podia, but Podia didn't have everything. Podia was fairly limited, but it costs less. So it really depends on what you need. If you just want to have some things recorded and just have a checkout, you're set. But if you want everything in one place, I did want to mention today some of the features that Kajabi offers, if anyone was interested in that. So now a lot of these things are some of the tech stack things we'll be speaking of. So if any of this kind of rings a bell, you may want to check this out. And this is very good for any business, actually. So every business, you're going to need your website. That's just key. Nowadays, you need your website. People have to be able to find you, be able to, see what you're about, right? So Kajabi has website builder, blog creation, custom domains, unlimited hosting, membership capability. So that's another thing I offer. If you sign up for one-on-one lessons, we have a membership, kind of like, you think of like a private group on Facebook on our websites. People sign in, and then students can literally type in there, ask questions about the instrument or lessons and different things like that, the YouTube videos, all of that. Security and customer support, SEO optimization, email marketing, pipelines, landing pages, affiliate programming, everything, webinars, So pretty much everything you need is just awesome. And the list goes on and on.
So what's interesting, So what's interesting there is that we have this this program that really does a lot of things for us. Like all in one stack. But really, although it does all these things, it has some specific components that you can get individually. Maybe you don't need that membership component. And really, like one thing I didn't even think about. Yeah, you need a website. You can get a website real quick.
Yeah.
You can really spend a day putting a website together for relatively cheap. And I think a lot of times people think that they need to get this $5,000, $10,000 website right away. You don't.
Yeah.
Okay. You need what we call your MVP, your minimally viable product. All right. Just start with something simple. Let people know that you're legit by having a website.
Yeah.
That's what my website did for me for the first year. It did no bells and whistles. It didn't really have great copy. It didn't have really good things. It did not convert people. But what it did do is it let people know that I'm legit.
Yeah.
And so and another actually what I thought of is a Google My Business is also really important. That's a tech stack. That's part of your tech stack. You should have a Google My Business inside of Maps to make sure that you're actually addressing the fact that you are out there.
Yeah.
But one thing that Kajabi and High Level do for us is it also talks about it does help you acquire and nurture leads. All right. That's kind of what a CRM does for us. All right. It has automations in terms of text messages and emails that you can do. And I think it's one of the most powerful things is because when I first started, I had an Excel spreadsheet full of names and it was terrible. And so it looks like we have another question. Nick, why don't you go ahead and grab it?
Yeah, so this actually goes perfect with what you're talking about. Do you all use email lists, and how often are you sending emails to your lists? So, yeah, I have an extensive list personally. And with us being at Niagara Falls, like you don't necessarily want to be bombarding people with deals and stuff to Niagara Falls because they're only going to come to Niagara Falls every so often. So I use Go High Level for our CRM, and it enables me to put people into certain categories. So if they're pre-travel, I can tell that. So they make a booking. I have their email list. But then I can offer them other things that are going to be available to them when they're in Niagara Falls. I can give them deals for that. But then I also know when it is that they've traveled. So maybe I'm not necessarily going to hound them to come back, specifically with me. I mean, I'm in travel. So the people that are coming here, they're not all locals. A lot of them are a little bit further away, but I might hit them up with some more like informational stuff, just interesting stuff about Niagara Falls, encourage them to share stuff. I'll send them an email asking them to share photos online to be entered into like a photo competition, stuff like that. So I'm not, you don't want to spam your people. You don't want them to hit that unsubscribe button.
Yeah, they'll opt out.
Yeah.
Do you use it any differently than Nick?
Yeah. So again, use the email marketing built into Kajabi. So we do YouTube lessons pretty frequently. So whenever there's a new drop, like we have one coming out next week, we send an email out to everyone, just let them know, like, hey, this new YouTube lesson is up on piano. Go ahead and subscribe. And then from there, lead them to the membership by saying, hey, you want to go deeper? Let's do one-on-one lessons, and everything like that.
That's good. I probably email people a little bit more than you guys. In fact, I just ran an email campaign for Valentine's Day. And what's really cool is, one of the important things that you need in your business is Google reviews, 5-star reviews. And what we did was we sent out an email to everyone on our list, which we, blasted everybody and said, hey, look, show us some love. We're putting a competition on which clinician can get the most reviews for Valentine's Day. And it had some good copy to it, and it was great. And we utilized that. And we ended up getting like 23 Google reviews in like 3 days. And so in terms of like the power of that, like, I don't know, any business owner out there knows that is actually quite a significant number. And these are people who we know, love, and trust us anyway. And they still hadn't given us a review. And they're like, oh yeah, click the button, Google review. And that was it. And so we do email blasts out to people who, maybe we've have like a new blog about arthritis, or sometimes I do a new video training on something or another. I'll let people know. Obviously, I use the email list to let people know about the blocks, right? And so there's lots of things that we do that for, but we don't do anything regular, mainly because we want to respect people's, we don't want to be spamming people. And so I think using it sparingly, yet when you do send it out, it's important. I think that's the best way to go,
Yeah.
especially when we're trying to honor the Lord. Again, if everyone's like, "Oh man, those are Christian guys," but then here they are spamming me every day,
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
doesn't represent Jesus
Mhm.
as much as we would like. So I think that
And
kind
you,
of gets to it.
yeah, and you want. I'm sorry. And you
Yeah.
want to. You still want to be frequent with it. So whatever system you have, whether it's once a week, once every 2 weeks, whether you send a newsletter once a month or something, make sure you're staying consistent
Mhm.
with it because you still want to be top of mind to your potential
Yeah.
clients. You don't want to be, I sent something here and then 6 months later, they're like, oh yeah, this business here. Just kind of just staying top of mind, especially if you're trying to bring in warm leads and
Well,
things
you're
like
also, I think that actually
that.
separates you and I.
Mhm.
You are dropping videos on a pretty regular basis
Yeah.
for people who are interested in seeing those and being trained by those.
Mhm.
Whereas I do have sort of some plans to maybe have a monthly newsletter or a bi-monthly newsletter for educational purposes.
Yeah.
But it's got to be tact. You got to have strategy and tact to it.
Mhm.
And if you're constantly sending stuff out, people are gonna not like it. But
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah. Let's see here. We got another question, don't we, Nick?
Yeah. So this one's from Jim Harris. Thanks, Jim. Do you use different stacks for digital social media for different age groups? Is email still king for you? So
Oh, can I take this
that's a
one?
good one.
Duet's got it.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. Take
Okay.
it away.
I'm so glad you asked that. Okay, so email, that's something I wanted to mention. Thank you, God, for bringing it back. So email is king, guys. Everyone who's watching this, please do not get caught up in only using social media for your business because you got to think of it like this. Social media, you're playing by their rules. You're playing by their game. So you can post something, the most amazing thing, and the way they do their algorithm, only one person will see it. Depending. And like we know years ago that they changed it to where you have to pay now for more eyeballs. Where back in the day, it was like you post something in your page in groups, and everyone saw it. Now you got to pay like, oh, you want 1,000 people to see it, whatever it is. So email though is fantastic because you're directly going straight to your individual, to your people. So you definitely want to be able to. Now I don't sort it necessarily by like age group, but just for me again, it's very directed towards aspiring creatives. But yeah, definitely making sure to get those emails. That's a big thing in every video. Join our mailing list. It's in the description and all of that because that's where you can hit them directly. Hopefully bring them in. So that was a great question.
I have one more thing to add.
Mhm.
I think texting's also in there too. I think a lot of people
Mhm.
they'll see the text.
Mhm.
I think there are some demographics and certain kinds of people
Mhm.
that don't check their email
Mhm.
like ever. Like
Mhm.
I've got friends who literally have 10,000 emails unread in their email box right now. And that gives me anxiety. And that's who I am. And then there's also people who will get the text. And I think sometimes doing with high level, and I'm sure Kajabi, you can actually send a text and
Yeah.
email out simultaneously.
Mhm.
And texting, I think, is really important. People are getting those. And so don't forget that.
Yeah.
I think Jim also is suggesting that there's more than just, like you said, digital media, but like, in terms of like getting yourself out there, like print, that's technically a technology, right?
Mhm.
Print advertising.
Mhm.
I think that's gone by the wayside. It can be okay in certain avenues, but not much. And so, yeah, and Amber actually just commented, yeah, the open rate for text is over 80%. Like, yeah, the texting
Right.
is absolutely required,
Mhm.
but not too long. See, that's why she should be on this podcast, is because
That's
she
right. I mean,
knows
I
what
can send you
to
the
do.
link. Let's get you on, right?
So,
No,
but
we'll talk. We'll
ultimately,
get you on here.
I think one thing that we need to make note of, though, as we go forward with some of this technology, and I feel like we need to kind of circle it back to maybe the point of all of this. So, really, when we're talking about these different kinds of options, let's get to what's the first step of systemizing my business. Let's come back to the next question, which is,
Mhm.
how do I partner with God in using technology to run my business? Because ultimately, you can run your business with technology all you want, but if you truly want a spirit-led business, you got to ask God how to partner. And so I know Nick's got a few thoughts on this. I really want to make sure that we understand, like, we have all these options and we really spend a lot of time on a CRM and like
Mhm.
Kajabi and high level. But the reality is there's all kinds of technologies, whether it's employee management, product distribution, data storage, marketing, accounting. There's all kinds of things that we can use. And so if you have certain questions about some of those categories, we can talk about them. But ultimately, you can have like 20 conversations, like for an hour each on every specific kind of technology. But what's even more important is how do I partner with God in the use of my technology?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, well, one thing that you kind of touched on is technology isn't necessarily, the internet and app. There's lots of different types of technology that I'm using that you wouldn't necessarily think of as far as your tech stack goes. Like we use these waterproof phone lanyards. We give these to all of our guests. They have a QR code on it, and we use that. But that was during a time of me trying to like solve a problem, and I went to God in prayer, and um, it kind of kept coming back around to like, well, how do you take care of your guest the best that you can? Uh, how do you get this message to them? I didn't want to just give our people, one of those random souvenirs that you get, and you're like, they're going to take it home, they're going to throw it out, and they're never going to use it. I wanted it to be something that was going to help them and better their trip. So, those waterproof lanyards for me, you're at Niagara Falls, you get to take pictures, you don't have to worry about your phone getting wet. But then it also has that functional piece of technology on
Mhm.
it as well. Uh, I've also had situations where, like, so in technology, there's different reservation platforms that you can use that will keep track of your reservation. And I've been pitched multiple different ones. And we're currently using Fair Harbor, and I've been pitched different ones, Peak Pro and um, ResD, etc. So I've been pitched these different ones, and I had to take some time and talk to God and say, "Hey, like, is this the step that you want me to take?" And it kind of came back to, well, if you're going to switch, think about some of these other things. You're going to have to retrain your entire staff. They're all going to have to learn a new platform. So maybe it does have a little bell or whistle, that's going to help them, but they're going to have to relearn all of that. And the amount of time and investment of changing platforms
Mhm.
um, wouldn't be worth it. And what ended up happening was some of the things that I liked about other platforms, Fair Harbor just ended up coming out with.
Mhm.
So it ended up working out for me. But yeah, I think taking time to pray, you talked about it the first episode, Dave, about strategic intercession. You are looking for something very specific, and you take time and you intercede, you pray, and look for that type of an answer. And what I've always come back with, it always centers around how can I show my guests the love of Christ? And ultimately, it's how can I treat them better? How can I make their day better? How can
Mhm.
I show them the
Yeah.
best day that they can have? Because that's ultimately what God would want me to do.
Yeah, that's really good, and it's especially because I like the part. I mean, again, the most important part of what you just said, all these different options, is pray first. Like we've got to take it to in prayer, and that's one of the best ways to actually partner with God is just ask Him His opinion. Okay, and then as you are led in that, you have to recognize that um, one of the most important options, or one of the most important aspects of being an entrepreneur, is knowing when to say no.
Yeah. Yep.
There's so many options. Like, and I think most entrepreneurs are very free spirited, like, oh, that, and then this, and I'll do this, and I'll do that. There's all this going on. But if we do that, we can absolutely miss the point of what God's trying to do in our business. And what's really important, and I think this is, I'm gonna quote Wes Bergman here, and this was very profound to me. He's like, you need to use the right tool at the right time
Mhm.
to solve the right problem.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, and so the tool that you're using now might not be the tool that you're going to use in 2 years, but you got to start where you're at. And some people are just starting off, and some people have been in business, I don't know, 10 years, right? And if that's the case, Amber, then you need to look at your tech stack and say, okay, what do we do with this? Are we where we're supposed to be? Now, again, Nick might be suggesting you might need to retrain people. Or on the other hand, if you're just starting off, the relearning cost is very low. And you have to recognize you got to use the right tool. And the only way you're going to know that right tool is through praying first and asking the Lord. And I have some suggestions before I get to that. I want to see what Juet has to say. But I have some suggestions of what that looks like to determine what that next step is and how we truly ask the Lord what that tech might look like for us.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Kind of connected, but disconnected. Something that you mentioned was kind of just knowing when to say no. And that was something that I was really wrestling with as far as time this week. You know, as entrepreneurs, we can kind of just like hustle and bustle and just work all day long because we don't have that 9 to 5 to kind of tell us when to stop. You know, we kind of just keep going and everything. And I was really just talking to the Lord about this week as far as like making sure I have my specific times of kind of just cutting off because there's other things that need to be done, you know, through the week, you know, and through the day with family and all the other responsibilities and stuff, right? So that's been awesome because stopping at a specific time actually forces you to finish and kind of be a little faster with knocking out the tasks that you have instead of kind of just dragging along the day and everything like that. So I think that's very significant as well. The idea of budgeting and honoring your time, but using these technological tools to automate the things that you don't have to be doing. Because it's all about, at the end of the day, it's 3 things. You're going to be able to eliminate, automate, and delegate. Those are the 3 things that are key. You look at everything you have to do with your business and be like, okay, let me eliminate. Is this thing actually benefiting my clientele? Is this thing putting money in my pocket? You know, pay attention to that. Then whatever's left over, okay, what can I automate? You know, and then what can I delegate thereafter and everything. So really paying attention to that.
All right. So quick thought. And I think that I'm not going to spend much time on it, but just to let everyone know, Jesus was an entrepreneur much longer than he was in ministry.
Yeah, it's true.
He was a carpenter. He had his own. It's not like he necessarily worked for someone else. You know, he probably worked under his father and trained under his father, but then he did his thing, right? And surely he used technology in the midst of his being a carpenter. Now, technology looked like probably a hammer and saw and that kind of stuff, but that's still technology, right? It doesn't have to be a computer. And so just a quick tidbit. I think that's a really interesting thought for us entrepreneurs out there. But so how do we decide on what kind of technology we use? And how do we pray about it? And honestly, the probably the easiest way to do this in wanting to hear from God is asking yes or no questions. God, should I use this? Should I do that? And if you ask God, should I use Kajabi to start online things and then having to do this while having to do that? And what do you think about this? And these open-ended questions. One of the things they teach us in PT school and like in medical school is you don't want to ask open-ended questions because you're gonna get a lifetime's worth of medical conditions. What you want to ask is closed-end questions because then you get a yes or no, and then you start to drive and actually get to the root of what you want. And in the same way, we can use that for God in a way that God's going to be like, yes, I can do this. I'm going to, because look, it's not a speaker problem. It's a receptor problem right here. And so really using yes or no questions is going to be really helpful in hearing from the Lord. And I have an example for you from 2 Samuel chapter 5. And this is what it says in verse 19 concerning David, who was kind of on the run, fighting the Philistines, and kind of at the same time running from Saul, right? The king of Israel at the time. And verse 19, it says, and David inquired of the Lord, shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you give them into my hand? And the Lord said to David, go up, for I surely will give the Philistines into your hand. Okay. And so, boom, just like that, David just inquired. This is like a battle-ready man. He's been killing lions since he was a kid. He knows how to fight. He's got an army at his back. And he still takes a moment and says, God, should I do something? right? So even if you have an army at your back, you still should be asking God, should I move forward? The next thing, so then we have this scenario plays out, and not, same chapter, a couple verses later, it picks up. And so obviously, and the Philistines came up yet again and spread out into the valley of Rephaim. And when David inquired of the Lord, he said, you shall not go up, go around to their rear and come against them opposite the balsam trees. And so he continues on, but I want to make a quick stop here. First thing that happened was David inquired of the Lord, and he said, go kill him, go get him. And then the second thing happens is the Philistines came up again in the same valley, and David inquired of the Lord, and then God gave him a different answer. So when we're in business and we are working forward with things, we should not necessarily assume that God's always going to say yes, or God's going to always say do the same thing the same way all the time. We actually need to bring him in and spend time with him and ask and inquire of the Lord if this is what we should do. And so what happened was he gave him the battle strategy, actually. And so it continues in verse 24 or so. And when you hear the sound of the marching of in the tops of the balsam trees, then rouse yourself, for then the Lord has gone out before you to strike down the army of the Philistines. And David did as the Lord commanded him and struck down the Philistines from Geba to Gezer. Okay. And so obviously this is wartime. Okay. This is not something that, this is not business, right? But the principle is he prayed first and then was led. He had a different plan for the second attack, and the strategy worked just fine the first time, and it would not have worked the second time because God had a specific design for that second time. And we don't always know what God's going to say, and so it's always important for us to be inquiring of him as we move forward with these kinds of decisions.
Yeah, love it.
So let's see here. We got another thing we want to talk a little bit about is the different types, not only just the types of technology and the importance of it, okay, and we're talking about automation, but are there other ways that we can partner with God outside of just saying, okay, what do I use? And so one of the things that we want to make sure that we're doing is finding out what is our first step in automation, okay? So going back to now, we know the different options. We know the strategy to execute. And now it's like, how do we start? So let's pretend we are a brand new entrepreneur, doesn't know a thing. What's the first step in systemizing my business? Nick, do you want to talk, or do you want someone else to talk?
Yeah, no. Do I want to talk? I'm a tour guide. I will talk all day.
Take us through the tour of starting a business.
All right. So one of the things that you need to recognize is when you start is you're not going to have as much traction. So it is a little bit easier for you to be all of the things. But as your business grows, and hopefully it grows, you're going to need to start to pass things off to other people, use technology. You're essentially needing to replace yourself in your business. And if you're the first person that takes on a certain task, get it down, learn how to do it, but then you'll be equipped to not only teach somebody else on how to do it, but then you'll also be equipped on how to manage them, and you have a better understanding of how a certain process works. So like I started off, I had to do the tour. I also had to handle customer service. I was my CRM. I was a little bit of a Wizard of Oz situation. I was a man behind a green curtain, making it look like I had all these fancy technology sending out for me. But really, I would get an inquiry for a tour, and I would manually send out their confirmation email. I'd go in, I'd change their dates. But yeah, but then you end up learning about the technologies that you need to replace those things. And as your business grows, then you're able to replace yourself. And we were talking about this before, Dr. Dave. But when you are replacing yourself, you're teaching. And when you're teaching, really, it comes back to discipling.
Mhm.
Jesus created disciples. He spent time with his disciples and taught them about himself, but then also how to live like he lives. And it's the same within your business. I might be teaching somebody marketing, but I'm teaching them how to market ethically and honestly and the way that Christ would do marketing. He's not going to go out there and spam people. He's not going to give misleading information. You want to be honest and straightforward and yeah, create disciples. So,
Yeah, I think one of the things that's also important in automating systems is to just list all the jobs in your business, right? Like you don't want to like you got to organize what you do, right?
mhm,
Before you spend all this time and energy researching technology and what's the first step and second step, really the first thing you got to do is, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
And then what you do is you look over that list and say, and you pray over it, right?
Mhm.
This is actually just starting a business is a lot less overwhelming than people realize. And this is like an Alex Harmozy comment, but he said, all you really need to start a business is you need articles of incorporation. You can go online and get it within a half hour.
Mhm.
You then have to get your business ID number, which comes in the mail about a week later. You need to get a business bank account, and then you need to figure out a way to collect payments. You do those three things, and you've got a business. And all you got to do is to go out there and start selling. Right?
Mhm.
That's it. That's a business. And so it's not as hard as people realize. And then what you do is you have a system in order to once you have the start of that, there's a system to how to run it, right? And that system is built on technology or manual labor, a little bit of combination. But then you have a list of jobs, and then you can organize that. And once you have that, step by step, you can go ahead and start automating what you can,
Mhm.
and then also delegating what you can. And then at the same time, and another thing I think Wes actually brought up in our classes is that you should know what you're doing for each of these things. Now I know that there are some business models that don't necessarily require that, but ultimately you should kind of know how to use your CRM before you delegate it to somebody else.
Right. Good.
There are aspects of our business that we should understand better than anybody. At the same time, if you're going to bring in somebody, you obviously don't want to have a replica of yourself necessarily all the time.
mhm,
Sometimes you bring someone in to do the things you can't do and you rely on them, and that could be a separation. But ultimately, a lot of times whoever's in charge, whether it's you, a partner, or a CFO, CEO type of people that come in kind of at your same level inside the hierarchy of a business, someone should be responsible for knowing all the things that goes forward in that. And I think we have a couple. Oh, Amber circled. The only thing holding you back is your lack of scale. Yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
At least for your
mhm.
business, right? And this is exactly how we want to go about that. So
I wanted to
go ahead, Juet.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to kind of go off of what Nick was saying. Now, before we started this podcast, us three guys, we were talking and just kind of just like praying over this and just talking about what the topics will be and everything. Something that we all mentioned was that we all kind of want to get into that role of kind of discipleship making and kind of being on the back side of our business, more so managerial, not necessarily the face all the time and everything like that. And I think that's very important as we talk about technology. Like, for example, my business is virtual, so I don't want to be the only one teaching all of the students one-on-one. That's why I want to have a team to be able to support and do that. So something I've always done is kind of walk them through maybe over the phone, over Zoom. And then most recently I'm like, man, I need to actually I'm shooting these YouTube videos. I need to shoot these training videos too. So whenever I hire someone on, I can just kind of just shoot them these videos to tell them step by step how to connect with the student, how we usually do our lessons, the whole process. And that's another way to be able to save that time using technology. Just kind of have these videos. Even if for some of you guys who are watching and you're just starting entrepreneurship, with things like that, you don't even have to purchase anything. You could just create a Gmail, have your YouTube account, and then just have some unlisted videos on YouTube that you just kind of send those links out to people who are joining your team. So there's a lot of ways too God can speak to you on, like, you don't have to spend and buy the most expensive thing. That's using wisdom too. Just kind of how can I budget and use my money wisely what do I actually need, and just kind of get that, so.
Yeah, I actually initially struggled with this first class. It was probably my worst performance of the blocks.
Oh, technology.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared, mainly because I don't
how'd
think
that turn out for you?
pretty darn good, actually. Thanks.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
It was my
so, I
worst
mean,
class. Well, you crushed it from here on out then. So
well, what happened was what actually happened was I brought a notebook that I was going to write in, and then they gave us a red book, and I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not using that red book. I'm going to use my own book. And and then after that, what I ended up having to do when we were in our 15-minute session where we had to write everything down is I wasn't allowed to use my notes because they're all in my white book. He even said, you're not allowed to use anything but the red book.
Yep.
Well,
yeah.
I didn't have any notes to put it all down, and so I kind of had to do it from memory, and I really struggled with that.
Yeah.
And
we got to follow the rules, Dr. Dave. Come on.
What's that now? Yeah, well, he made it sound like I was going to get kicked out if I used that on anything other than that red book.
Right.
And so, anyway, it was interesting because I struggled with this, and I actually wanted to bring this point up. You all, and myself included, and even Amber, who is in here, and even Dr. Jim, who I see, all of us are in the service-based industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it is hard to scale when you have to rely on employees.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of the people in our blocks cohort, they're crushing it because they also don't have to rely on others. They are relying on technology, and all they had to do is optimize it. All they had to do is click, and it goes right. And look, it's a just different kind of business. It's not easy or hard. It's just different. But in terms of ease of scale, having a tech type of startup is so much more streamlined. And there's other challenges within that, of course. Just writing code and getting started in the first place is sometimes like the hardest part. Whereas a service-based industry, you just buy a mop and you start cleaning. You know what I'm saying? Like you can do it a lot quicker. And so there's challenges in both. But with our service-based industry, what I was going through in my mind is, okay, how do I scale? I mean, in Wes even like named his slideshow, how do you scale the unscalable? And that really spoke to me because I'm like, you're correct. I am hard to scale. I cannot pop out new Dave Harvitzes to go treat people very quickly. And it was actually quite frustrating. The biggest bottleneck in my business by far, not even close, is absolutely talent acquisition. How do I get people coming in and then doing what I can do? It was really hard to find. Right. And so the question then started stirring in me. How do I use technology to actually reproduce myself? Right. And that's kind of when I started thinking, okay, well, I can do training videos. I can start putting things together. I'm using videos for my clients. Why aren't I using videos for my PTs, right? And doing and creating training modules for them to be better at sales and marketing and clinical expertise and so forth. And that's when, I really started getting the gist of like, okay, this is what my business could be in scaling. And that's actually what prompted my latest Facebook post. I know you both kind of touched on it, is kind of like, what kind of business are we in? And we are in for me, I'm in the discipleship making business. That's what the disciple making business now. I am no longer in just talent acquisition because I can acquire all the talent I want, but it might not be the right talent. But if I get people to know, love my why, that's where we start actually scaling ourselves. The problem is it's very hard to do, very time consuming.
I want to touch base on that right there. So it's interesting. I love that you mentioned you have the training videos. That's awesome. Because like, for example, I'm kind of like a hybrid between service-based and digital products too. I think if anyone watching this, if you can write out everything your business offers, if you could find a way to have some type of digital product to offer, whether it's a PDF walkthrough explanation of something, or some courses or some videos or something that can already be, you've done it once, it's just there for sale. If you can find a way to do that, that would be fantastic. So try that. But then also, if it's okay, I don't know if we're jumping to questions.
Yeah, Jim's got a couple good ones.
Yeah, I want to answer the second one. So I know someone wants to answer the first one, but I can answer his 1099 question. But we can go in order first.
Yeah, we can come back to that. Yeah.
Okay.
Go
Okay,
for it.
cool. So we'll go ahead. Yeah. So pretty much, Jim, thanks so much for tuning in again. Pretty much, I have a 1099 virtual employees, especially since it's a virtual business. We used to do the music lessons in person, but now we do them. It's all online. So we use like Google Meet to do the virtual lessons. The staff is just virtual 1099 employees, and they're connected to the bank account to kind of pay them after each session that they do with the students and everything like that. It's just a lot simpler and easier, especially based off of how many lessons they do a month and year, and tax return information and things like that. So, yep.
Good. And yeah, I have one 1099. I do have a virtual assistant that kind of does some background work for us. But then and you guys got to be careful. There are laws determining whether you can use 1099 or W-2 employees based on your industry. So just be careful of that. My industry is required to have W-2s for most most physical therapists.
That makes
There
sense.
are some exceptions, but those exceptions come with certain criteria, and you kind of have to know some of the laws, and it's also probably state by state. And so
I
I think
know specifically.
yeah, go ahead.
I know specifically with tours, it was explained to me that if you're hiring them as an employee, then you can dictate how their tour goes. If
Mhm.
you're hiring them as a 1099, I have to just be like, all right, your job is a 1 hour tour. Maybe give them a little bit of direction, but however they end up handling it is how they handle it.
Okay.
Um, so you have more control when it's an employee, uh, W-2, but yeah, otherwise you lose a little bit of that ability to control the output that your company is, and that's your name that is speaking
Yep.
for you.
Hmm.
So we have different companies that we're working with, but it's more like we're outsourcing certain things to other companies because we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but using different technologies, having the right tool for the right job, you don't want to have somebody that's doing everything for you necessarily, because if they're doing everything, chances are they're not doing all of it very well. So if you have different things that solve different problems, and this goes for your own business as well, you don't want to be everything to everyone. You want
Exactly.
to be very specific of this is what I do and I do this very well.
Yeah.
So the people that want that done very well, they're going to work with you. But it's
Yeah.
the same when you're recruiting other people. You want to make sure that they're the best at what they do. So
Mhm.
That's really good, especially the part where when you were talking about like whether you have control. There's a give and take though. For people who aren't really up to speed, 1099 employees you don't actually have to pay as much. You don't have to pay payroll taxes, and so it saves you a lot of money
yeah,
to actually have a 1099.
Mhm.
From a
yeah,
business perspective, quite a bit, but the trade-off is less control, and then
Mhm.
you gotta figure out whether you want that control or not. So
exactly.
it's really good. I have a big mistake that I can share here. So Jim asked, what are some of the biggest? Okay, how about this? What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've made in scaling through tech? Too fast, too soon, not enough. So obviously, not enough is always probably going to be every entrepreneur's answer to this. You did
Mhm.
not scale fast enough, or in terms of outsourcing tasks, right? That's number
Mhm.
one. But I had automations plugged into my system, and I had people texting and messaging my company's phone. And we had a system that had all these automations. Someone will say, "Hey, where are you guys located?" And it'll spit out like an automation. The problem is all the automations were wrong. And so we
Mhm.
had like all kinds of conversations happening, and we had no idea what was going on. This is really early on when we first started using high level. We had it built out by another company that uses a lot of these automations. It was kind of pre-built for us. It was really great. The problem is we didn't know how to use it, and
Mhm.
so we had all kinds of people texting us, calling us, and having all these automations going out. There was emails going out to people, and they're like, "I'm not even from here. Where did you get this information?" It was a disaster. So I was like, turn all those things off. And then we had to build from scratch, slowly
Mhm.
but surely over months.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
was my biggest mistake. Most people were fine with it, but that's unfortunate disaster I had starting with it.
Yeah.
For me, it was mostly just letting the ball drop places. Like, we weren't doing email marketing for a very long time. In fact, we actually just kind of recently started it. We were focused on doing other things really well, but once you get it going, it shouldn't have been that difficult. So um, I should have done that much, much, much earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's most people.
Yeah, I think for me, we use Zoom sometimes, but we mostly use like Google Meet for the lessons and everything. But I more so use Zoom. I haven't used Google Meet that much. So I just kind of just like, oh, Google, it's easy, whatever. But didn't get used to the platform initially. So there were times where I had instructors teaching the students, but since I set up the meeting, I had to be in the meeting. The way it was just set up some kind of way, I had to be in the meeting to like initiate it. And I finally figured out how to like change that. But there'll be times I'm out maybe at the store or something, and like, oh, we can't get in. The mom is waiting or whatever. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I gotta like download the app, sign in, then leave, and then everybody. It was just like really funky. So now at this point, we're good.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's all kinds of growing pains, and I think we need to realize that we're going to fail.
Yeah.
I think most people that go into business are type A go-getter
Yeah.
kind of people.
That's
Not
me.
everybody, but in general, that's what we get.
Yep.
And we want everything to be perfect. And kind of going back to that concept of that minimally and a viable product, like the reality is that we just need to start imperfectly
Yeah.
and keep moving forward imperfectly forever. It's always going to have a problem. There's always going to be issues. There's always going to be technology not doing what you want it to do in one way or another. Like setting up a podcast in the evening.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things that are going to happen. But ultimately, being okay with the imperfection is kind of also the parallels our walk with Christ.
Yep.
We have to be okay to walk in the grace. If we were perfect, we would not need Jesus. We need him.
Yeah.
And so being able to walk in that imperfection, whether it's our business or our personal life, is a skill, and it's hard. And then not living in shame when we don't do well, or being mad at ourselves, or being like, dang it, Dave, you suck at this. When those emails came out, and everyone's getting blasted with all these automations, I don't know where they're coming from. Like, I could either turn to myself and say, Dave, you're an idiot. Why would you ever do this? Like, you don't know what you're doing. You got to stay up all night. You got to figure it out. Or I can just walk in the grace and it'll be fine, right? Knowing that God is a loving God, a loving Father, and wants to just bring us along his journey anyway.
Yeah.
And we're going to start wrapping it up here. I know we started late. We might go a little late, but I want to talk. So you can scale what you need to scale, right, in technology. But one of the more important aspects of this, and we've touched on a little bit, which is kind of like that, the employee and the training that goes involved in that. And I had some profound thoughts that I felt like were truly from the Lord, and I want to share them with you guys. And just kind of touching on the fact that we want to replace and replicate ourselves. Technology is a tool to do that. But it's harder to do that when we're all in the service-based industries. And I know there's a lot of people out there. That's a big portion of businesses. And so I want to suggest a couple things. And the first thing is that we should really gravitate towards discipleship and not training. Training is the action of teaching a person a particular skill or type of behavior. Now, discipleship is much more nuanced than that. And what's interesting is I had a hard time finding a good definition because it was all in the context of religion. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's where it's found. Discipleship is a religious term. And so, piecing it all together was kind of hard to do, but I did it. And this is what I came up with. In general, discipleship is a relational situation of following a teacher and being a student of his philosophy and actively trying to become like your teacher.
Yeah.
It's actually why us Christians call ourselves disciples of Jesus, because we are actively trying to be more like him. We're studying him, we're reading about him, we're praying with him, we're contemplating his teachings, we're mulling it over, we're chewing the cud, and to all that just to better understand him so that we can be more like him. And honestly, I feel like having that mindset in our businesses is going to be really, really beneficial. Now, the problem is it's not as efficient. It's probably not going to be as cost effective, and it's probably going to come with a lot more work. But we're not doing our businesses, we're not doing the work to make more money, to grow faster, and to serve more clients, to overall to grow the business.
Mhm.
We're doing our business, we're running our businesses to change for the kingdom, to change lives. And sometimes the lives we're changing are not necessarily only the clients, but the employees that we choose to bring alongside us. And
Yeah.
sometimes the most important conversations we can be having is not a sales conversation, but the conversation with your employee about what it looks like to walk with the Lord, or have prayer. And maybe it's not necessarily having the religious conversations. Maybe it's, what are your goals? What are your dreams? What do you want? What does it look like? Let me counsel you. Let me build you up. Let me make you a leader.
Mhm.
Those are the things that are probably way more important and valuable in this world than the next $1 million business. I know you guys probably have some thoughts, or maybe we just end it there, because really, I think that's where the heart of all of this comes from. And we really want to emphasize the fact that overall, we want disciples walking alongside us. And I'll leave you with this. And if you guys want to say anything, I'll let you do that. All that being said, if I'm truly going to be making disciples, I need to make sure I'm worthy of being followed. And that's something that we all need to keep in our hearts when we're leading businesses and employees along the way.
I kind of want to piggyback on that because I just had this thought while you were talking about how people typically have two different types of relationships with God. And there's one, which is you're constantly trying to just do what you have to do out of fear of hell. And then there is doing the best that you can out of love for God. And I feel like that kind of is the same in business. You have a lot of people that like they start this journey, but their whole time they're just operating in fear of like, and that's where that perfectionism comes from, that worry about even taking that leap in the first place. Where if you're just constantly living in, all right, what is the best that I can do? You're going to have a lot more success because ultimately, even when you do make mistakes, people are going to see that you are actively working and trying to do the best that you can. So that's
We have to do a shout out here. Someone very special just joined us in the very end.
oh, is that so? Who
Yeah.
might this be?
Hi, babe.
The
Sacrificial
queen.
authority. She loves it. Well, I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? Is leading from, like, if you are sacrificing everything you are, that gives you authority.
Mhm.
Like that. And what's interesting too is, though, although that may be practically true, what's really true is that authority is already given to us. Like, for example, and I know my wife's already joined us, I was given authority in my home.
Mhm.
That's not something I earned, is what I was given. But then I need to walk in a way that's worthy of that authority.
Mhm.
And that's the same thing is true with our businesses. Ultimately, it's all his. We have just been blessed with ownership or blessed with stewardship of our businesses.
Mhm.
And we need to walk in a way that is worthy of that authority, not because it's performance based, because it's honor based for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really good. Well, guys, it's been about an hour. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope that you guys were blessed and edified by our podcast. Next week, we move on to a completely different topic, and look for our posts, and we will let you know where we're at with the next episode.
Love it.
Yeah, I am very thankful for everybody that's been on. Here, I'll wrap us up. Jewett, go for it. You say your goodbyes. I got one more thing for everybody before we sign off, and then we will see you guys next week.
Yeah, for sure. So, guys, just want to thank you so much for tuning in as usual. And please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will absolutely love that. And continue with the comments. Let us know how you are tech stacking, and let us know how you are building disciples, even in your ministries and in your businesses as well.
All right. So next week, I had to look it up. That's what I was doing. Next week, we're
We're allowed
going to
to do that.
talk about copywriting and design. I feel like we can get into some
That's
Bible.
Duet's jam. That's Duet's jam. Yeah, that's what
Oh,
you.
yes.
That's what you rocked on, right?
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
All
When
right.
it
So he's
comes
going
to
to be leading the
design,
teachings.
there's
He's
a lot
going
of
to do it all.
parallels.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight. If you're viewing this later in life, not just today, make sure that you can still leave your comments. We'd love to answer your questions in the comments.
That's
But
right.
like, comment, subscribe, and share what it is that we're doing here. So thanks, guys.
All right. Take care, guys.
Great time. All right.
Bye,
God
guys.
bless everybody.